Hi everyone, this is Stephanie Thompson, Director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network, and welcome to our webinar, Adopting a Child with Down Syndrome. The National Down Syndrome Adoption Network was founded in 1982 by David and Robin Steele under the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati. Although we are a program of the DSAGC, we provide information and support to children and families in all 50 states. The mission of the NDSAN is to ensure that every child with Down syndrome has the opportunity to grow up in a loving family. And hello, my name is Stephanie Thompson. I'm the Director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network. I have a 27-year-old biological son. His name is Christopher. And before I started my position here at the NDSAN at the adoption program, I worked for 11 years on different programs at the DSAGC with a bulk of my time spent as the Early Matters Coordinator, which means I provided support, resources, and information to new parents who just received a diagnosis of Down syndrome for their child. So the services we provide, our most important service is our expectant and new parent line. That is our cell phone number where expectant new parents can call or text us at 513-709-1751, and I will have that listed at the end of the webinar. That's very important to us, so they can reach us anytime, and we will respond as soon as possible to those parents. Our NDSAN Registry, which is our registry of families who are home study ready to adopt a child with Down syndrome, and they are approved to adopt a child with Down syndrome. Support to adoptive families. So that means when you contact us, that first email where you say, gosh, I'm interested in adoption, all the way to finalization, we are here for you with information, resources, and support. We do outreach to medical professionals. We kind of do those through the local Down syndrome parent groups. We have a fantastic booklet that I'll show in our next slide that we present, that we want presented to medical professionals, geneticists, and OBGYNs. So when they're giving that diagnosis of Down syndrome and they're offering options, we would like adoption to be included. And then information for anyone. So we respond to about 2,000 requests a year for information via our Facebook page, text, email, and we will respond to you. And here is our booklet. So it's A Loving Choice, Adoption as an Option. And for medical outreach programs, like I said before, to Down syndrome parent groups. So if you are listening and you're involved in your parent group and you have a medical outreach program, we would love to send these to you at no cost. They're to be used by medical professionals when giving that prenatal diagnosis. So first, let's talk about our most important work, which is when an expectant or new parent contacts us and the support that we give them. So most expectant new parents, they actually find out about us through Google. They do a search, they just type in Down syndrome adoption and we're the first to come up. The reason being is adoption is not talked about as an option in most genetic offices or OB/GYNs. So when that expectant parent is given the diagnosis of Down syndrome, usually termination is talked about, and we believe that all parents have the right to know all of their options, which also should include parenting and adoption. So the good thing is Google has us covered. They do the search, they find us, and then we provide that support. We also get referrals from genetic counselors, hospital social workers, pregnancy counselors, and adoption agencies. So the first thing we do when we get in contact with an expectant or new parent is we just sit with them in grief. They're going through a grieving process, and with me being a parent and I've been through that grieving process, I know how to sit with them, and we just go through that grief process. And then, when the time is right, we talk about education, which means, do they know what Down syndrome is? I did not when my son was born, so I'm there to, refer them to education, answer any questions that they have about Down syndrome. Then we talk about, after that education piece, then we talk about parenting. What would parenting look like? They can ask me any question. And if they decide to make an adoption plan after talking with us, and close to half of the parents do, I will refer them to their local parent group. But if they decide, thank you so much for all of this information and support, but we really feel that there is a family out there on your registry, and we love our child so much that we think an adoption plan would be the best plan for our child. So we refer them to families on our registry. So in 2018, we had 20 families who decided to parent after counseling with us, and then 25 families decided to make an adoption plan after counseling with the NDSAN. All right, let's get started. Grab your notebooks, your pens. You're going to be taking a lot of notes. I'm going to try to condense all of this information into 1 hour. And believe me, I could talk for several, but I don't want to bore you to death. So grab a pen, grab some paper, and let's go with the first step of adopting a child with Down syndrome is to educate yourself about Down syndrome. So the biggest thing, correct terminology, and you're going to notice me saying this throughout. It's Down syndrome. Okay, it's not Downs. It's not Down's syndrome here in the U.S. I think in other countries it is, but here in the U.S. it's Down syndrome. They are referred to, that is, folks with Down syndrome are actually called person first language, a child with Down syndrome, a person with Down syndrome. In the spelling, under syndrome, S is not capitalized. So person first language is used because that shows that you're putting the person before their disability. You are seeing them and referring to them as a person. So using the words, I want to adopt a Downs, or I want to adopt a Downs child. We prefer that you say, I want to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So person first language, biggest thing. Next, just a quick overview. Down syndrome is a variation within the chromosomes that affect cognition, and it may present in various medical issues related to the heart, bowels, ears, and more. And the other biggest thing is individuals with Down syndrome are more like us than they are different. I want you to get your education here, okay, at Global Down Syndrome Foundation's website. So I've got it up for you. If you go to globaldownsyndrome.org, then you hit on that About Down Syndrome tab. It's going to take you to facts and FAQ about Down syndrome. I would love for you to read this and then see all those questions. What is Down syndrome? What is the cause? What is the population? Boom, boom, boom. Please click on every single one of those, answer or read all the answers. And I do know that Global Down Syndrome has webinars. So just do this. Start with the first tab at Our Story. Go through each of those. And that would be really helpful for you. You need to gain knowledge. You have to know what Down syndrome is. You have to know about the medical issues. To be on our registry, you have to have that education. And then we will talk about experience. But the biggest thing is you have to know what Down syndrome is. So educating yourself here at Global is a great start. Other thing, gaining local knowledge and experience. This is huge too, because you want to have experience with Down syndrome. And the reason I'm talking about these two things is most of the families who decide to make an adoption plan for their child, they do say to us, we want the family to have education and experience. I mean, that's understandable, right? You want your child to grow up in a family who has that experience and who knows what Down syndrome is, and they're ready. So you can find your local parent group also at the Global Down Syndrome Foundation website. So if you go to About Down Syndrome tab, resources, then hit local Down syndrome organizations. Okay, click on your state, and they've got it beautifully listed there. So find the closest parent group and go ahead and contact them by, using the contact page on their website. Get on their mailing list, get on their email list, join their social networks, find them on Facebook, find them on Instagram, join all of those, check out their calendar of events, and volunteer. That's the best way to get hands-on experience, is to volunteer for events, and also any educational meetings that they have, please go to those. They're going to have educational meetings about behavior, about therapy, about feeding. Hit all of those. That's really going to help you with getting that knowledge and experience, but also you're going to have that local knowledge. So, if a birth parent a new parent or expectant parent ever asks, hey, Do you even have resources in your area? You can say, absolutely, we have this therapy, this early intervention. I know where to go for medical issues. So you want to be in the ready for that. So that's number 2, gain that local knowledge and experience. All right, step 3, you need a home study. You will want a domestic home study, actually. And in order to adopt, you need to have a home study. So what it is, a home study is a very large, detailed, in-depth assessment of your family. It's information on everything, and this is what is needed to complete a home study. So we're talking your extensive childhood history. We're talking about you. We're talking about your children. So I'm saying that what they're going to do when I see a home study, every home study says, you know, Mary Smith was born on, and they give your birth date, and they talk about your childhood. They talk about positive experiences, negative experiences. Where did you go to school? Did you graduate? Where did you go to college? How was your parents' relationship? How did you meet your spouse? So information on your marriage. How long have you been married? Extensive information on your children. And all the individuals that are actually in your home. So if you have, like I had a family whose the adoptive mom's sister was living with them while she was in college. So we have to get information on them. They want to know about your health. They will check all of your medical records. They want to know about your employment, how long you've been there, your financial situation. What is your debt to income ratio? Do you have life insurance? They want to know, does the child, this is really important, is the child, is there a guardian for your children? So those, and then the reasons for wanting to adopt. And it takes, right now, it probably takes on average about 3 months for a home study to be created. But the important piece, this is why it's highlighted, you must let your home study worker know that you are motivated to adopt. You have to use that quote, motivated to adopt, unquote, a child with Down syndrome. You need to make sure that your worker lists any experience that you have with Down syndrome, especially medical issues. That's huge, but any experience. And it must be listed in your home study's recommendation piece, which is like at the bottom of the home study. It should say in there that you are approved to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So if it's not listed there, or in the motivation piece, there are some agencies that are like, nah, we're going to pass. We're not going to allow this they to be shown to the new or expectant parent. Because if it just says they want to adopt a child, usually agencies will just assume, they want to adopt a healthy child. So Down syndrome, and you know what? Special needs will work if you say, I want to adopt a child with special needs, because if you're open to, other disabilities besides Down syndrome, sure, go ahead and put that, but it would be great if it said Down syndrome. That just really impresses the agency. So let's talk about which home study is best for you. We've got a couple of options here. So we're going to talk about option 1, which is a private adoption agency home study. Okay, number 1, you will want to choose a nonprofit 501c3 agency for your special needs adoption. The agency, you will want them to have special needs adoption experience. And I'm going to explain that later. But most private adoption agencies are all-inclusive, meaning that they will provide all adoption services that you will need from the time you talk to them about getting a home study all the way until finalization. They should be your go-to, your support on the adoption end. So I'll always be in the background if you have, if you actually have questions that you're having, if you have questions about your agency and things, but I'm mostly that Down syndrome piece. But when it comes to adoption issues, you will want your agency that will be able to help you. So there is a fee for private adoption agency home studies. They can go up to $3,000 updates, because you do have to update it depending on the state that you're in. So most of the states you have to have an update each year. Some go to 2 years, a few go to 3 years. You're looking at updates up to $1,000. And, if home study fees are over $3,000 or, the updates are over $1,000, you might ask them for their fee schedule, their fee statement, something like that, a breakdown of their fees so you can see exactly where the money is going. But what I like about these agencies, the private adoption agencies are required to abide by the licensing and procedural standards of your state. So, and that was another thing, you have to get a home study in the state that you reside in. So, questions to ask your private home study, or I'm sorry, your private agency in regards to special needs adoption. First of all, if you don't see it on their website, ask them, are you a nonprofit 501c3 agency? Okay. And if they say yes, then go to number 2. Do you have experience with special needs adoptions? Because there are different things that you have to do in a special needs adoption, okay? And if they say yes, then hey, that's fantastic. If they say no, it's not a deal breaker. And I'll tell you why, because it's so very rare. So say you live in Minnesota and you get that Minnesota agency that does your home study. If you were on our registry, you're probably not going to adopt a child that's through your, like, okay, if your agency, it's probably going to be rare that your agency is going to have an expectant parent who has a child with Down syndrome. And so they would have to do that special needs piece there. So it's going to be rare that will happen. But it would be great for special needs adoptions if they know about subsidy and helping you with that, and maybe helping with Medicaid if need be, and then helping to apply for a special needs adoption at finalization, those kind of things. That would be helpful. But if they say no, it's not a deal breaker. Number 3, if the baby is born in your state, here you go. If they have a baby and the baby has, if they have a baby with Down syndrome who needs a family, ask them, if that ever happens, would they take custody of the baby until finalization? Will they take custody on paper? And I will explain this later as well. And if they have a baby, again, with Down syndrome, will they apply for SSI and Medicaid for the baby? And will they help apply for your state's subsidy? So those are the questions that you're going to want to ask the private adoption agency. Okay, option 2. Public adoption agency. Okay, your public adoption agency is through your local county Department of Child and Family Services in that foster adoption division. So public agencies have custody of children who have been removed from their home due to possible neglect or abuse, or the parent has voluntarily released the child. I have heard of that happening, even though it's rare. There are no fees for a public agency to write your home study, but here's what's up. They are doing that. They are providing that service to you with the intent that you will provide foster care and then possibly adopt a child within their jurisdiction, okay? And there is oversight, which is great. Public agencies have to adhere to state mandates. But here's the other big thing. Remember that if you're saying, oh, I want to do foster care, I want to get a foster care home study because I want it to be free, and then I want to straight up adopt a child, I want you to get educated about foster care. I want your heart to be in it if you're going to go this way. Foster care is helping reunification between the birth family and the child, and you are there as a support to the birth family, as a respite and support for the child, and support that's desperately needed during that time. So please remember that foster care is put in place for reunification, and we all know that there are families who are not going to be reunified for their child, but in our hearts, it is our hope that the family can get the services and support and rehabilitation that they need for the family unit to come back together. So if your heart is in the right place for foster care and reunification and supporting the birth family, I'd love for you to go this way if you can. So questions you're going to want to ask your public agency. Number 1, will I be permitted to use my home study outside of your jurisdiction and for public and or private adoptions across the U.S.? Because, again, they're doing this home study so that you will use it in their county or the state to help with children in your state. So, but there are agents, there are county entities that'll say, sure, that's totally fine. You can use your home study outside of our jurisdiction to, adopt a child out of your state. So if they tell you no to question 1, if they say, oh, I don't think so, you can ask them, can I purchase my home study? So some counties will allow that to happen. So you can purchase it for a fee. If they tell you yes, they'll say sure, and they'll say, okay, great. So not only will you allow me to use it outside of my jurisdiction, or our jurisdiction, but will you help me apply for SSI Medicaid when Medicaid gets transferred to your state? I'll explain that in a little bit. Will you help us apply for subsidy? Will you provide post-placement services? Will you help us with finalization? If they say no, it's not a deal breaker, come to me and we can, I think we can use an attorney and kind of help with that. But if they say yes, then hey, you're in. So, which home study is best for you? Option number 3, licensed social worker, psychologist, or therapist can also do a home study. So there are about 13 states only which allow a licensed social worker who is not affiliated with an agency or a psychologist or therapist. A psychologist and therapist, there may be less states, but about 13 which will allow a social worker who's not with an agency to write a home study for a family. Okay. Now, home study fees for these are generally lower. Okay. They can possibly help with post-placement and help you find an attorney if needed. But here's what's really important, okay? There are presently, not 6, there's actually 8. So there's presently 8 states that, I put 6 because 2 are kind of yes, sometimes no, that are agency-only states. That means that the following states will only consider home studies from a licensed child-placing agency, because those states will only conduct adoptions through a licensed child-placing agency, okay? They will not conduct an adoption through a social worker. So at present, we're looking at Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maine, North Dakota, and Oregon, okay? Also, and I don't have it listed here, some counties in California are agency-only counties, okay? Now, which home study is best for you? Let's talk about that, okay? Option 1, private adoption in reference to special needs, okay? Let's talk about the adoption pieces now so we can help you determine which one is best for you. So private adoption is when a birth parent voluntarily terminates their parental rights. Okay, the child can be newborn to age 18. The NDSAN keeps all private adoption situations confidential. So if you are not on our registry and you just message me on Facebook and say, hey, you got any babies? I'm going to tell you, nope, I'm not telling you anything. It's confidential out of deep honor and respect for the new and expectant parents. So we keep those confidential. So the expectant birth family will choose an adoptive family from a registry. But here's the deal. The preference, okay, a majority of the families who decide to make an adoption plan for their child, and usually with the infant adoption, they want the family to be under the age of 40. And that's kind of a general rule of thumb within the U.S., that there is no more than a 40-year difference between the child and the adoptive parent. So they generally say, we'd like they don't say it. They usually just, when they are presented with families, they'll say, oh, this is a younger family, we'd like to go with them. They are usually preference a smaller family with 3 or less children. And they do say we would love for the family to have experience with Down syndrome. So that's why I talked about that earlier in the webinar. There is usually no cap on the amount of present children. So, present children that you have, okay? But make sure to have an agency when you do your home study. Make sure to have them check with your state's ICPC department to make sure that there is no cap on the amount of children that you can presently have. So that's ICPC is Interstate Compact Division, and it's when if you adopt out of state, your state has to work with the placing agency state. They have to create a compact and to allow the baby to leave state lines and then come into your state. So the states communicate with each other, and that interstate compact department may say, well, we do have a cap, so they can't adopt more than, or they can't have more than like 6 children presently in the home. So you want to make sure that if you are a larger family like that, do make sure when you talk to the agency, if there's a cap, make sure that there isn't one actually. So private adoptions have fees associated with them. Placement fees and legal fees are usually around $15,000 and can go up to $20,000. That's from placement to finalization. Okay. There are travel expenses that are not included in that. And here at the NDSAN, we try to help with trying to get you discounts. Like we have an adoptive dad who used to be on a registry, and they adopted, and he works for a car rental company, and he'll give discounts to families if you need to rent a car. And we'll talk to you about using the Ronald McDonald House when you can. So things like that. So we'll try to help you in that area with discounts. There are possible birth, parent, and medical expenses. Not all situations have that, but it's possible that the family may need expenses like help with utilities, rent, groceries, gas while they are pregnant, because maybe if they are not able to work due to their pregnancy and they need, to make up those finances, the adoptive family will help. And medical expenses as well. So they may need the family to pay their co-pays, their deductibles, things like that. And don't worry, we try to get that information to you before, you commit to presenting. Not all though, so it's okay. Now, biggest thing is we charge no fees. So agencies charge fees. We do not charge fees. Okay, so let's talk about public adoption in reference to which home city is best for you. Public adoption in reference to special needs. So public adoption, again, those are the children who are removed from the home and they are in foster care. So those children can be any age, any age from newborn up into adulthood. I have had adults, they were 21, 22 years old. So very rarely are infants, quote, legally free, unquote. That is the term that is used. That is the legal term that is used. Very rarely are infants legally free for adoption. The process being in foster care is that their hope is to reunify the child with their birth family. So it usually takes 2 or 3 years of court dates and rehab and counseling and trying to get services into place. And then after about 3 years, they'll do what's called TPR, which is termination of parental rights. So very rarely have we had, because I have had families ask me, can I adopt a newborn from foster care? No. And the reason is, again, because we're thinking of that birth family. We want reunification. Okay, that's what we want. But if it can't happen, then about 2 or 3 years later. But it has happened. I have seen where there were situations where rights were immediately terminated and the child was under a year. But again, that's very rare. Children in foster care who are legally free for adoption are featured on our NDSAN website, so you can find all the kiddos there. We have quite a few who need homes right now. So the county will choose the adoptive family a majority of the time. The birth family usually does not. Sometimes they'll have input, but it's the county that will do that. But I will tell you, the counties love working with the NDSAN because we do provide a family profile along with the home study. I'll talk about the family profile in a couple of slides, but the county workers very rarely get a visual of families, and they just love when our families are presented because we provide that visual for the workers. Anyway, there is usually a cap on the amount of children you can have in your home when you're talking about foster to adopt adopting from foster care situation. So the cap is dependent on the state that the child is in. To give you an example, the average cap is 6 children, which means you there can only be 6 children in the home. So if you want to adopt a child, you can only have 5 children presently living with you, and then that adopted child would be 6. So I have seen it waived in special needs adoptions. And so they'll do a waive if a family has extensive special needs and they think the child would be perfect, or if the family has special needs and they are in the same state as the child. I have seen that waived. So I will go ahead and send a profile of a family who has more than the max amount of children, because there might be something in their profile that really grabs the attention of the worker. The counties like to abide by that no more than 40-year difference rule, but also, again, that has been waived as well when there's experience involved and they just look like a really great family and they think they would be a great family for the child. They will waive that as well. If you are a single parent, a same-sex couple, if you are a single gay or lesbian parent, check with your state. There are some states that have parameters about that situation. We have no parameters. We do not exclude anyone who has a home study, but your state may. So you will want to ask about that. And there are no fees for public adoption, no placement fees. You will have to pay travel expenses, but some states will reimburse. So, I mean, if you're adopting a child from Texas foster care, okay, Texas will reimburse you a certain amount. So if you decide to go this route, the biggest thing you'll want to do is you will want to keep receipts from the time you agree to match. So and everything, gas to get to the child, airfare receipt, travel, hotel, everything, food, just keep it all. Keep it all in an envelope, and because you can get reimbursed. Some states will allow reimbursement on that. And I just wanted to show you where our children in foster care are on our website. So if you go to ndsan.org, click that adoption process tab. It's going to do a drop down. Click on children in foster care, and you're going to see some really, really cool kiddos right now that just need a family. Okay, so which home study is best for you? Let's recap. So if your heart is set and you're intent on adopting an infant with Down syndrome, your best bet's going to be a private adoption home study. Now, if you cannot pay placement fees, then your best bet is going to be a public adoption. Now, I can tell you that there are very, very few agencies out there. I may think of one. I may think of more later, but one that's on the top of my head is Spence Chapin, out of New York, who they do have offices in a couple of other states. They charge no fees for their adoption, and they do have, I believe, a special needs adoption program, and they do have children who come up. And if you are on their list, you will not pay placement fees for that private adoption. It would be considered a private adoption. And I do know that there is an agency called The Cradle, who is in Illinois. They are wonderful. They will have a child with Down syndrome every once in a while, and they charge very low fees. I'm talking, I think, $4,000 to $5,000, might be a little less. So there is that option. But if you cannot pay placement fees, then a public adoption home study is your best bet. Now, if you are over 40 and you want to adopt an older child, a public adoption home study is also your best bet. And a little side note, the reason that we talk about the 40-year difference and, parents over 40, things like that, is because the expectant or birth parent, they really, really want the adoptive parent to be in the life of the child as long as possible. So we know the reality is caring for a child with Down syndrome could be a lifelong process. So they are really taking their child into consideration. And so we do hope that you are understanding that consideration and honoring that this could be a lifelong process. So they would love for you to be there as long as possible in the life of the child. Now remember, you can use a public home study for private adoptions only if you are permitted to use that home study outside of their jurisdiction, and for private and public adoptions in any state. Okay? Now, If you want to adopt an infant and you cannot afford the fees, you could choose to get a public adoption home study. You will need to be open to foster care, but make sure that your worker has marked your file that says that you would like to adopt a child with Down syndrome, and you could be placed in foster care with an infant. But remember, I know we've gone over this a few times, foster care is there for reunification. So we are there to honor that birth family and to help and support them and support the child. But that it is possible that you could provide foster care for an infant, and then if there is termination of rights, then you could adopt that child from foster care with no fees. Okay, other adoption situations. Okay, so we've gotten the home study piece out of the way. Hopefully you've understood and say, okay, I think I know which home study I want. So let's talk about other adoption situations. Okay, so we've talked about adoption through public adoption through foster care. Okay, we've talked about private adoption. Another adoption situation would be attorney-assisted adoption. Okay, so there's adoption attorneys. They're responsible for the entire adoption. You could possibly have lower fees. I've seen the fees be the same, and I've seen them be higher. But most of the time, they do have lower fees. Some attorneys will provide that support for the birth parents, which is great, which is so important to us. We want that support for the birth family. Or they'll refer them to a counselor. Some will actually work with an agency, which is great to get that counseling in there. Attorneys involved in adoptions, they must adhere to the standards of the American Bar Association and applicable state and federal laws. So that's good. And hopefully the attorney belongs to the American Academy of Adoption Attorneys. They have standards of ethical practice that the attorneys need to adhere to. And you can actually look the attorney up to see if they're part of that adoption attorney site. So, but in reference to special needs adoption, attorneys cannot take custody of the baby on paper. And I'm going to talk about that here soon. And attorneys cannot apply for SSI and Medicaid and cannot help apply for subsidy. Now, I've heard very, very rare instances where they can, and I'm wondering if they pull in an agency or some kind of consultant to help with that. Okay, so, but know that most of the time those two things cannot happen, which is kind of really, those two things are very important in a special needs adoption. Other adoption situations are facilitator-assisted adoptions. So facilitators will match an adoptive family to a birth family. Now they're starting to use different names other than adoption facilitator. So you'll have to, if it's a term that you've never used, you can actually ask them, wait, are you a facilitator? And they may say, oh, well, that's what they used to call us. So the names change a lot. So I'm going to stick with adoption facilitator. That's been the name for the longest time. But so there is little to no state licensing or mandated oversight with facilitators. And I think at least 15 states have banned facilitators from working in their state. So, and also in my experience, when I've had contact with adoption facilitators, the fees are 2 to 3 times higher. So questions to ask: if you hear about a child for adoption through a facilitator, these are great questions to ask, okay? First of all, what is the name of the agency in charge of the placement? Okay, a facilitator is usually never in charge of the placement. There's an agency, and the facilitator is trying to get families to go to that agency. So ask them that. What is the fee just to send in my home study? So we've had facilitators who say, oh, if you just want to send in your home study, it's $250 or $500, and it's non-negotiable, and they just continue to accept home studies. So there shouldn't be a fee, and the thing is, I can send your home study to them, and it shouldn't be a fee for that. So ask if there is a fee and what that is. Ask them to send you an itemized statement. So please send me an itemized statement of the fees. Okay. I'd like to know where the $35,000 to $40,000, where exactly is that going? What's that paying for? Also, if I am matched with the child, will the fees increase after match? I've had quite a few times where a facilitator was involved and then there was a match agreement signed, and then they would say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, we need 5,000 more, we need 10,000 more, we need 15,000 more. So ask them if the fees will increase at match, and ask them if they can put that in writing if the fees will not increase. So then also ask, if they need to guarantee that. Now, if they kind of say no, or if he answers to these questions, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to give you the name of the agency. And is there a fee? Oh yeah, there's a fetus and just the home study, and it's non-refundable. And no, I'm not sending you an itemized statement. Then you need to seriously consider presenting for that situation. So, but those are the questions that you're going to want to ask. And what's great is the Academy of Adoption Attorneys I had mentioned before. They have a great piece on facilitators versus adoption attorneys. So you will find that at their site there. And I've circled, you go to adoption, and from the drop down, hit facilitators versus adoption agencies and just read that piece. It's really educational. Okay, now we've got the adoption piece out, or parts out, private, foster care, attorney assisted, facilitator. We got the home study piece. Now let's talk about subsidy. Here's where you're going to really want to listen. Like, make the room as quiet as possible, and give me all of your concentration, because this is a pretty heavy topic. I'm going to try to help walk you through it. Now, number one, I am not a subsidy professional. I've just been doing this long enough where I know some really good facts, but I can refer you to the professionals. So if you have questions that I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can answer that 100%, I can help you find the answer. So a subsidy is also known as adoption assistance. I believe that's what it's called out in California. It is a monthly payment given to families who adopt a child with special needs. Medical coverage, therapies, respite, all of that may also be included in that subsidy. You will receive a subsidy, like 99.9% of the time. You will receive a subsidy for a child in public custody, which means if you adopt a child from foster care, okay, you will receive a subsidy. That subsidy most often, like 90% of the time, comes from the child's state. Okay, say 99.9 comes from the state. Now, a subsidy for a child in private care is possible. Okay, it's more than is possible. Most of the adoptions that we help with that are private, we are able to, the agencies are able to get subsidy, apply for SSI and Medicaid, because we work with some great agencies who have that special needs adoption experience. Now, most of the time, the subsidy will come from your state. Why? Because you will most likely finalize in your state. Okay, if you do not finalize in your state, it will come from the state that the baby was in. The state that the baby was born in is called the placing state. You were called the receiving state. Okay, but most of the time, the subsidy, if you finalize in the receiving state, your state, subsidy will come from there. Now, the agency must be a nonprofit 501c3 agency. Why? Because nonprofits can claim zero as their income. Okay. Then what they will do is they will take custody of the child on paper. You will become the guardian or the custodial agent of the child. You will receive physical custody of the child at placement. The agency will receive paper custody of the child until finalization. That allows them to apply for Medicaid and SSI. Medicaid, once it is approved, it will backdate to the time of, I believe, it's either birth or it's the time of papers are signed where you receive placement. So that's great. So it's retroactive. And then the SSI piece shows that the child has a disability. So once SSI and Medicaid, I think they go hand in hand, but once SSI is approved, then that is proof of a disability. That piece is a candidate for subsidy. Okay. So what you will do, and with the help of the agency, they'll help you with this, you will walk into your local subsidy office with that proof of SSI, okay, and you'll work with your agency to get that and say, hello, I am the custodial agent, or I am the guardian of this child. We will be finalizing their adoption, but for now, we would like to apply for subsidy, okay? So you'll start applying for subsidy. What you can do is you can negotiate, okay? Because they're going to come back and go, oh, that's great. We will give you $1 a month. And you'll go, I don't think so. Because, and another piece that's very important about subsidy is going to help you pay for all of those things that either your insurance doesn't pay for at all. It'll pay for things that, like horseback riding lessons to help with, help strengthen a child's trunk, any kind of therapies that's going to help the child, any kind of medical assistance or assisting devices, anything like that, like a communication device, okay? There is going to be a lot of things that your insurance is not going to pay for that subsidy is going to help you with. It's just really important to have so that you can provide the best services and resources for your child. So you can negotiate and go, no, I'm sorry, that $1 a month will not pay for an assistive technology device. And so you'll go back and forth. And I will tell you this now, typical adoptions go from the time of placement until finalization is usually 6 months. Well, when you're negotiating a subsidy and you're applying, you're going to go past the 6 months. Just tell you that right now. Also, the fact is, it's not going to be fun. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of having to deal with leaving a lot of voicemails. You're going to have to take a lot of notes. Who did you speak to? When did you speak to them? The date, the time, what did they say? You'll have to call people back 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And it can become a complex and frustrating process, but it is so very worth it. So negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. And do not finalize until you have agreed on subsidy. Because here's the deal. When you finalize, whatever the subsidy was, it is set. Okay? And SSI will most likely drop. There are very rare cases where a family can get SSI and subsidy. That is out of my scope of professional, of expertise, but I know it can happen in some instances. But SSI, Medicaid will drop. Subsidy will kick in at finalization, and that is because then your income, you will have custody on paper of the child at finalization. That's why. So, right after placement, right after placement, ask your worker, so the worker in your state, the worker who did your home study, who's going to help with post-placement, ask them to make sure that the adoption is deemed a special needs adoption by the judge at finalization. I'll tell you why. I had somebody tell me a few years ago, make sure that it's deemed a special needs adoption by the judge at finalization, because having that on paper helps with other different benefits. So as our government goes through and makes laws and mandates, sometimes they'll make a law that says if an adoption is deemed a special needs adoption, they will be able to get this type of benefit. So I don't know too much. That's also out of my expertise, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that and that you tell your worker that as well. You've got some homework I'm going to give you for adoption subsidies, adoption assistance. Your homework is to go to NACAC, it's called, North American Council for Adoptable Children, nacac.org. If you go to the Find Answers, from the drop-down, pick Adoption Assistance, then over to the right, pick State Adoption Assistance Programs, and just click on your state. Use your state as an example and study what subsidy gives you. It's so very important to see all the things that can be provided to your child on a monthly basis. And subsidy is provided until the ages of 18 or 22, depending on the state. So, but go there, very important. And I will tell you, little side note, I would study all of NACAC. I would go through all of their tabs because they do talk about the child adoption tax credit. I think it's just called the adoption tax credit, but they have so many great articles, things that your going to want to study. So that's very important. But go there, study your state adoption assistance program so that you can kind of get some experience and get educated on what a subsidy is. Okay. This is also very important. You want to join our registry. Congratulations. That's awesome. Let's get started. If you have a completed, signed, domestic, updated home study, you can join our registry. Okay? Your worker, though, will need to email your home study to me. So what's going to happen, really, the detail is you're going to say, hey, I got my home study. It's ready. We're ready to adopt. And I'm going to email you back and go, great, here's a consent form. I will send you a consent form that you will need to sign, basically giving consent that your agency is allowed to send your home study to me. Okay? You will fill out that consent form. You're going to CC it to your worker, CC it to me. I'll review it. And I'll create a file for you. Then I will send an email to your worker that says, hey, I got that consent form. I'm so happy for the family. I also have this. I have another form. It's just a one-page form that I need your worker to fill out called a home study information sheet. They need to just put some dates on there, fill out some fields for me. And then they'll return that along with a copy of your home study. And if you already have a home study, then I need that original home study and all of the updates. So a lot of people just send me the update. I actually need that first home study. So they'll just send me copies of the home study. I don't want the originals mailed to me. I just want a copy. It doesn't need to have a signature because the home study with the signature will go to the agency at match when you're matched with a family. So what'll happen then is when I get that, so I need the consent form, I need that home study information sheet, I need your home study. When I get those 3 items from your worker, I will then send you our registration form. It is in Word. You will need to fill it out in Word. You will need to save it in Word, and you will need to email it back to me. When I get that emailed back, I'll check everything. And then I'll be like, hey, congratulations, you're on our registry. Now, the biggest thing too, not the biggest thing, your home site is the biggest thing, but one of the second biggest thing that you will need to join our registry is to create a family profile. So let's talk about the family profile. The family profile is the second most important document behind your home study that you will hand in to us. And I'm going to tell you why it's so important. This is going to be your visual storybook. It will tell your family's story to the expectant or new parent, and it has to be done beautifully. And the reason behind that is the space that the new or expectant parent is in while viewing family profiles, they're still going to be grieving. So they're going to basically, if you could imagine, they're looking at families who are going to be parenting their children, okay? And it's tough, and it's heartbreaking. And there's grief involved. And we want to make this profile absolutely beautiful. We want to honor those families that are viewing your profile. So let's explain a little bit about what we expect from your profile. The profile, again, it's a visual storybook. You're going to talk about your education. If you went to college, what is your degree in? You're going to talk about how you met your spouse or significant other. If you what year that you met them and what year you married them. If you give what year you did those things, those milestones, like birthdays, anniversaries, then you don't have to change the profile text every year. So for example, if you want to say you were married in 2012, say that instead of saying we've been married 8 years, because then you have to go in every year and change that number. So you will want to tell your story about how you met your spouse or significant other, what makes your relationship work. And of course, if you're single, you can leave those parts out. You will devote about a half a page or a page to your children, making sure to include what year they were born. You will talk about extended family in the area and the traditions that you share with them. And if you do not have extended family in the area, you can talk about how many times you visit them a year, things like that. The families just want to know who will be in their child's circle. So talking about extended family is very helpful. You will talk about education resources. So in your area, do you have a great inclusion program? great special education resources, great places for therapies? Do you have a local Down syndrome parent group support? Do you have medical resources? Does your child's local children's hospital have a top cardiac unit? Because close to 60% of children with Down syndrome have some type of cardiac issue. So anything really related to the medical issues of kiddos with Down syndrome, please list those local resources. Do your research and find that important information out. Find out if your community has a Down syndrome clinic, and if so, you will definitely want to talk about that in your profile. But the two most important things are, number one is the why. So expectant and new families want to know your heart. They want to know why you want to adopt a child with Down syndrome. It is extremely important to them. And then, of course, your experience. They want to know exactly what your experience that you have. So get very, very specific. Talk about the experience that you have with folks with Down syndrome. The big things are, now, in this box here, you will need to use professional pictures. Very important. No selfies are allowed in your family profile. We do not want selfies in your bathroom, in the mirror. Remember, when you're choosing pictures, when you're looking at pictures, you want pictures that say, this is our best self, this is our authentic self. So, is this a picture that you would want an expectant or new family to view? You want your entire profile to be non-identifying. You cannot list your last name. You cannot talk about what city or county that you reside in. You cannot talk about the name of the church you go to. You can't talk about the university you graduated from, the name of it. You cannot name your employer. Nothing identifying can be in the profile. We are very protective of our adoptive families. You cannot use Microsoft Word or any similar word processing program. You must use a publishing program that will make your profile look professional. So you can't use a web page or a blog. It has to be a document that we can send as an attachment. So that means when you send that attachment to me, it must be a PDF. And also means that you cannot create it in Word and save it as a PDF. So what you can do, though, is you can create it in Microsoft PowerPoint or Apple Keynote. But you need to save those files as a PDF and then email it to me. But you can get help. So there are family profile companies out there who can assist you with creating a beautiful and professional family profile. And I know some of the resources as well, so feel free to email me and I can assist you with that. Okay, so you have gotten your home study, you've filled out the registration form, you have completed your profile. So let's talk about how that registry works, how our registry works. Number one, we are not a waiting list. So this term has been used for years, and we are trying to change the paradigm on that. We are not a waiting list, and the reason why we are not a waiting list is years ago, when the term was used all the time that we had a waiting list, an expectant parent heard this term, and she thought that that meant that she had to wait to place her baby with us, and she decided to terminate the pregnancy. So what we say is we are a registry of families who are approved to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So that is what we say. The expectant or new family will tell us what they're looking for in a potential adoptive family. This is their right. They love their child so much that they absolutely deserve, and they want to put, they want input on the adoptive family, and absolutely we give that to them. So they could put any parameters they want. They could say, they want a single family. They could say they want a traditionally married family, less than 3 kids. Can mom stay at home? Anything they want, we will try to honor that. So we take those parameters along with what they tell us about their child. So if they're going to have a baby girl, she's African American, they're going to let us know those things, and we put all of those parameters into the registry, and the registry will kick out a best fit of families. So if your home study approves you to adopt a female newborn African American, then your name will appear on that report. So it will kick out a report of potential families. And what I will do is I will contact you via email. So on your registration form, it is very important that you give me the email that you have that comes up on your phone, the email that's connected to your phone, because you need to be able to get our emails immediately so that you can respond as soon as possible. So you will get an email. And the other biggest thing is the emails are extremely confidential. So again, this is a theme throughout the talk here. We honor our new parents and our expectant parents. Their information cannot be shared with anyone. When you get that email, you can share it with your spouse only. That is it. We're very strict about that. So you will share it with your spouse. And you will all talk, is this a situation that we want to present for? So guess what? It's okay to say no. A lot of families think that if they say no, they're going to get kicked off the registry. Absolutely not, because we honor and we love you as well. And if this is a great situation, you think this would be a great situation for your family, please present. But if you've prayed about it and you've thought about it and you don't think this is the situation for you, please email me back and let me know. That is totally fine. The other thing with how the registry works is you must stay current with your home study. So about a month before anything expires within your home study, you'll want to start getting those things renewed so that you can stay current. And staying current when your home studies and on your home study, then you stay on the registry. So we get 3 most asked questions, frequently asked questions. Number 1, the $1 million question is, how long am I going to wait on the registry? What is my wait time? And that is the $1 million question that I am so sorry I cannot answer. And I'll tell you why. A lot of factors are involved. Number 1, I have no idea when the next call is going to come in. Or, maybe I should say it, I have no idea when the families that I'm counseling currently are going to go, okay, I think I want to make an adoption plan. So I actually went 4 weeks over the summer without anyone making any plans, and I don't think I got many calls either. But then I got 5 families in one day who said, I want to make an adoption plan. So that's one factor. The other factor is all of our families are different. Those families who want to make an adoption plan, they're so very different in what they want. Now, they do share a common thing. They all have a child with Down syndrome, but they're all looking for something different. So I could have somebody say, hey, I want a single dad, and I want him to have 3 kids, okay? I could say, I could also have a family, hey, I want a family that has 6 kids. We're from a big family. We want our child to have a big family. So it really depends on, if you come up for any of these situations as well. Now, here's where I can help you. Okay? If you really take a good look and if you're really realistic, okay? So what I'm trying to say is I'm reaching out to those folks that are much, much older. So if you are 55 or 60 and you're saying to me, I want to get on your registry, but I only want a newborn, and I only want the newborn to be a girl, and I only want her to be in my state, well, guess what? Probably not going to call you. But if you are more open, so, the more open you are, so if you're open to any age, any gender, any ethnicity, I'm going to call you. And if you meet the parameters that are common, if you're a younger family, if you have a smaller family, things like that, if you have hands-on experience, I'm going to call you way more often than if you put more restrictions on yourself. So that is how the wait time works. That's why I cannot give you an answer, and I'm so very sorry for that. But that's kind of how, the whole, how it works with not being able to give you an answer on that. Number 2, do we charge fees? Absolutely not. We charge no fees to anyone. So we know that adoptive families are most likely going to have expenses, and so we don't want you to be burdened with expenses from us. We do not charge fees. We do have a donate button because we are run on donations, and you can just hit that donate button as many times as you want to support us. And then, can I use my international home study? Unfortunately, you cannot. Your international home study is usually created for a certain country, and that country will have different parameters from the United States. So with us, you need to have a domestic home study. Now, your agency may amend if you have an international home study, they may amend it for you. Some agencies will do that. I think most of them are like, no, we just have to do it completely over. And you can have dual home studies. You can have an active international home study and be looking abroad, and you can also have a domestic home study and be looking here in the United States. Okay, so I hope you've taken a lot of notes, because we are at the end of our program. So what can you do right now? Okay, so you don't have home study, you're just looking into this and you're like, oh, okay, I think this is what we're going to do. First thing is you talk to your spouse. Hopefully they're listening, and if not, you might want to let them know that you're looking into Down syndrome or adoption actually, which is a pretty big topic you want to talk about with your significant other. So make sure that once you're both on the same page, like I talked about before, what can you do right now? Educate yourself on Down syndrome. Okay, go back to that Global Down Syndrome Foundation site. Learn everything that you can. Watch webinars. Email me if you want. You see my email there on the screen. I think I have a list. I think NDSCcenter.org, and I can email you this, but NDSCcenter.org has webinars. I know Global has webinars that you can watch. I think you have to pay, but it's a small fee, but it's so very worth it. So keep educating yourself. Start now. Start now with joining your local parent group. Like I said, very important. Just find their website, like their social media pages, get on their email list, get on their mailing list to get their newsletters. Volunteer. That's huge. Okay, you can do those things right now. As soon as it's confirmed that you will be approved for a home study, start working on your family profile. I do know, like with Mallory through Arrow and Root, could take about 4 weeks, because she puts a lot of thought and a lot of work into your family profile. So it could take that long. So go ahead and get started. Now, in closing, I want to communicate with you that the one constant about adoption is that it changes all the time, and it is not constant. So you're going to be doing, saying a lot of prayers. You might be shedding some tears every now and then by going, wow, this can be very tough. And it can be a hard journey. Okay. So you need to have patience, and you need to have peace. You need to have, let me say that one more time, patience, and you need to have more patience. Definitely need to have peace. And because it's going to get tough, you can call me and I'll counsel you, and that's totally fine. But I'm telling you this to also tell you the journey is so worth the reward. It will be so worth going through this process to adopt your child. And I have just about every family say to me, wow, that was tough. You're absolutely right, but I would do it all over again 100 times to infinity for my child. But I've got your back. So take my email down and email me anytime, especially with this. If you've taken a ton of notes and you had questions that weren't answered, please email me. I will be happy to get back with you. Please know, though, we are extremely busy, and I will get back to you in the order it was received, but know that will happen. And last, really, thank you so much for going on this journey with me and thinking about taking the journey of adoption, of Down syndrome adoption. Thank you for listening, and I really appreciate it. And our last one is check out those gorgeous kiddos that we've helped through the NDSAN. These families on our registry have adopted these kids. And take a look. So you've got ndsan.org at our site. Make sure you go through all those pages, especially if you're an adoptive parent. I want you to read the new and expectant parent pages. I want you to feel that. I want you to have that honor and respect for those families. Check out our Facebook. And we just started an Instagram. Instagram is NDSAN321. And they've got my email, and then you can text me. I prefer text. It's just easier to respond. But if you want to call, absolutely. You know what? Text me first, because what we'll do is we'll set up a time to talk. Okay? All right, folks. Thanks again. And I hope to be hearing from you soon.